What's going on, everyone? In this video, we're doing the weekly recap of the StockedUp trading floor. The market had a wild week last week, especially with this NVIDIA earnings release and crazy reversal, and we're definitely setting up for a pretty exciting this week as well. Definitely tune into the main channel video for the specifics on that, but jumping right into this week's recap, we'll start with the high-risk breakouts tab as usual. I would say the week started out a little bit slow, but as it progressed, we saw some more volatility and bigger moves. So if we start off with Monday, November 17th, we could see ONDS puts had a fair move of like 90%. Google calls moved up by 60%. Johnson & Johnson calls by 58%. Dell calls 58%. Google calls 55%. Circle puts 49%. Carvana calls 43%. Like, all these moves are fine. No home runs in this group by any means, but fine, okay moves. A handful of stocks moved up in an okay way, and there were a handful of duds sprinkled in there as well. Nothing really too crazy happened to start off the week. So I would just say it was more of a slower day than anything else. And then even if we look on Tuesday, we saw a little bit more of an increase in momentum, where we could see we had MSCR calls pop up by 142%, Netflix calls by 115%, AMD calls by 82%, or AMD puts, I should say, Wolf calls by 70%, MRK calls by 70%, a handful of other trades that had fair moves, and a handful of duds sprinkled in there as well. Again, nothing mind-blowingly crazy, just, I would say, a little bit slow in the grand scheme of things, especially as investors were a little bit on edge heading into NVIDIA's earnings, which certainly changed the dynamic quite a bit, as we will see over these next 2 days. Looking on Wednesday, we started to see more of an increase in volatility. Google calls popped up by 260% and 239%. Netflix puts had some good action at 110%. Circle puts 103%. A handful of other trades that did pretty well. And of course, a handful of duds. This was a nice increase in volatility, especially from Google and Netflix, as we just saw more positioning changes heading into the NVIDIA earnings release, and this was on Wednesday, of course. By the time the market opened on Thursday, that's when the floodgates kind of bursted open. SNDK is a stock that we've been talking about so much in the short term. I know many people have done very well with this one, but it was also the play of the week on Thursday. We can see these SNDK put options popped up by 481%, which is beyond phenomenal. That was amazing. That was a nice home run. Uber puts also had a great move of 415%. Hood puts 170%. Walmart calls 121%. Tesla calls 117%. IREN calls 112%. Oklo puts 101%. A handful of other good moves as well, and of course a handful of duds. But overall, very good day on Thursday. It's important to always keep in mind that opportunity is never distributed equally, whether you look at it in a day-to-day sense or even a ticker-by-ticker sense. The fewest instances offer the most opportunity, like a power law distribution in terms of time and intensity and also ticker symbol. So this was really great to see. Thursday was phenomenal. Friday, we saw some okay action. I didn't think it was really anything that great or crazy. BE puts moved by 104%, which was nice. Home Depot calls by 103%. We saw a handful of other decent plays, but really nothing too crazy. I think this week was a little bit more chaotic than most, as the largest and most influential company in the world, NVIDIA, reported earnings, and the market reaction was very similar to what we've seen with recent earnings releases with NVIDIA over the past few quarters, like we talked about in the nightly videos, where we see the initial move, but it tends to whipsaw and reverse back. So very interesting dynamic here. We are heading into a holiday week this week, which should make for lower volume and lower volatility later in the week, but it should still be pretty normal for the first half. Shifting into the pullback setups. Setups are never as crazy as breakout setups, because the best breakouts just don't pull back. But what's nice about pullback setups is they tend to be slower, smoother, and just easier to trade. They're not going to have as wild and quick and chaotic swings, which is a good thing and a bad thing depending on what your values are. But looking at the pullback setups, there were a handful of decent trades, nothing too crazy, which is to be expected in a market environment that is, again, a little bit more chaotic than usual. Shifting into the theta trades, 4 out of the 5 immediately expired for max profit, which is always great. As we always say, if you don't short put options or you don't know how to, it's something at least worth becoming aware of, because most people naturally start out looking at buying calls or buying puts. But as you'll realize, there's a lot more to options trading than just that, especially when it comes to selling options and combining multiple options legs to trade spreads. This helps not only more efficiently deploy capital, but it helps you capitalize on specific parts of the distribution in just a more effective way. I know we talk a lot about this in the weekly live events, but if you need any help with shorting put options or spread trading or anything like that, as always, feel free to reach out to Tom, Hunter, Mason, or myself in SM Chat, and we'll make sure you're taken care of. But besides that, thank you all so much for watching, and let's crush it in the market this week.